Hello and welcome everyone to Last Stop Penn Station. Ian Riccoboni, our guest of honor, Cary Silky. Cary, we got a special one for you here today. We're back. We took a little break. I went on vacation. We'll get to that next week because this week we got something very cool.
Yeah, our good friend Dave LaGreca, and he is our good friend.
He is.
He's a busted open guy.
Which you can hear on Sirius XM on the Fight Nation.
Always has supported Ring of Honor, but over the years, and I think you're picking up on this now, he's become a real friend.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good man, and we're going to ask him about some of these. Sometimes I need a little qualification to these stories I tell.
Yeah, you and I lived in very different New Yorks. I lived in a very sanitized New York. You lived in a little dirtier, down in dirty, gritty New York. And Dave is almost at that crossover period. He's been there for when it was still down and dirty. He goes into the city now and has for a long, long time for Sirius XM. So he's experienced the change over time. And we're going to see if there really was hookers arm in arm and hookers hanging out of cars and drugs everywhere. Like you said, there was. I don't doubt the validity of this, but I don't know. It's just so different from the world I lived in.
Well, let's see what he's got to say. Maybe he even went to Showworld.
It's our pleasure at this time to welcome another very special guest to Last Stop Penn Station. You know him from Busted Open Radio. Cary and I know him as a huge wrestling fan, a rock and roll nut, and a man who's lived near and dear to Cary's heart and the place you grew up and became a man, so to speak, New York City. Welcome, Dave LaGreca. Dave, welcome to Last Stop Penn Station.
How are you guys? It's a pleasure to be on, man. I'm really excited about tonight. So thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. And before we get started with your stuff, I got to show both of you something. Here it is. This is a very poor presentation, but the very first draft of the Last Stop Penn Station book. Would you read?
Wow. I'm proud of you.
What does it say?
Last Stop Penn Station, Selling Drugs, Scalping Tickets, and Changing the Face of Pro Wrestling in America by Cary Silken, as told to Mike Greenblatt. Wow.
We're working on it.
Jeez, wow, okay.
That's pretty awesome. And Mike Greenblatt's an awesome guy too. So that's so cool, man. Congratulations.
Where do you know him from?
What's that?
I said, where do you know Greenblatt from?
I know him from Ring of Honor, but even before that, some of the metal magazines I used to read back in the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's start there. We know you're a huge wrestling fan, but on Last Stop Penn Station, we talk about everything. We talk about music, wrestling, New York in the 80s and the 90s. You're a huge metalhead. I was impressed when you started rattling off Alice Cooper tour dates and set lists and things like that. Who are some of your favorite artists, and walk us through any memories? We know you listen to the show a little bit. Who's some of your favorite bands, and where do you used to see them?
Well, I was always like a hard rock metal guy. So, for me, the Garden, Brendan Byrne Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey, always had monthly shows. But even like the club scene in Jersey, Chicago's, Mothers in Wayne, streets in New Rochelle, New York. So the music scene was huge for me, in Jersey and New York, especially like early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, what year did you legally turn 18? Because it was an 18-year, I tell Ian this, the drinking age was 18, which is crazy when you think of an 18-year-old kid, right? What year were you legally able to go?
89.
89, all right.
Were you able to slide your way into any of these clubs prior to that?
Yes.
I'll tell you what.
And I know we talked about this before. Teasers and Passaic, you didn't need an ID. You just needed to look cool. Maybe, especially me at the time with the leather jacket, the long hair, the chain hanging down. You know what I'm saying? And once you're in, you're in. So you could buy whatever you wanted. So, it didn't matter. I could be a senior in high school. As long as you were able to step through that door, you were good to go.
I don't mean to get you in trouble, Dave, but Teasers doesn't sound like a place that just had rock and roll music. Is my intuition correct here?
No, there probably is a lot more going on than just music. Yeah, there was, man, some pool. Maybe you could play some pool. I don't know, but yeah, there was a little bit more going on than just that.
So, with music and your love of heavy metal and rock and roll, tell us about some of your first experiences going to live shows, where they were, who you saw, what you liked, what might have disappointed you maybe.
Sure. Well, Cary, I think we've had this conversation before. Like for me living in Jersey, okay, like New York was like the forbidden zone. Like, my parents never ventured over to George Washington Bridge or go through the Lincoln Tunnel. Like that was like, we never went there. We lived 10 minutes away, but like they were just strictly Jersey. And that was like, oh my God, you don't go there. Cause like, it's debauchery in New York City. So you never go there.
Dave, what town did you grow up in? Go to high school?
Hawthorne.
Okay.
Hawthorne.
So you were like,
I grew up in Hawthorne, but I went to Don Bosco. That's where I went. So I went to a Catholic school. So that's even more of that, like guilt and forbid. Like, you go to a Catholic high school and you got your parents saying, don't go to New York. So as soon as you or one of your buddies got their driver's license, the first thing you would do was go to the city. That's like the first thing you would do. And you wouldn't go to like Lincoln Center or Madison Square. Like that's not your first stop when you first go to New York. You know what I mean? Like you just go a couple of blocks, you know what I'm talking about, couple of blocks outside the Lincoln Tunnel, that's all, one stop shopping, just 2 blocks away.
There's no way. Cary's mentioned this. I don't believe him Cary tells a story of hookers, arm to arm, shoulder to shoulder, lined up.
Hundreds of them.
Lined up, male, female, whatever your preference is, they were there. I can't imagine this. I went to school there from 05 to 09. That sounds like a completely different world.
Oh, yeah, because you went there between 05 and 09.
Okay.
It is a different world, because if you were there like any time during the 80s, it changed. What, Cary, like 92 maybe, like around then, 91, 92?
93.
Yeah. Like that's when it completely changed. But the 80s, and I mean across the board. I'm talking about just the music scene. Because by the time, Ian, that you went into New York, like all the cool clubs were gone. They were either gone, closed down, or commercialized. Mm-hmm. But like there was, and I try to explain this, and I guess even to somebody who's a sports fan like you are, it's the difference between Shea Stadium and Citi Field, right? Yeah. You go to Citi Field, you get a comfortable seat. Every seat's a good seat. They come over and give you food. You could get sushi, a glass of wine. But there's no character or personality. It's too convenient and too comfortable. Even though Shea Stadium was just a shit house. Yeah. It had character and personality to it that added to it. Like there was a danger there. You sat in the upper tier, you were gonna get stung by a bee. Right. There was beehives everywhere in the upper tier. Like there was a danger to it. Like you had to know where to sit, where to go, where the best places to be. All you got when you went there was you had 3 choices. You had beer, you had a hot dog, or peanuts. Like there was no sushi. There was no Philly cheesesteak. Like you didn't get any of that. You went to a ball game, you got a hot dog with mustard. That's it. And you got a beer. That's it. Cary, am I wrong? Like that's what you got. And that's all you wanted. You didn't want anything else.
Of course, you're not wrong, and you didn't think about it otherwise. I remember when they started fixing up Yankee Stadium. They fixing it up moderately in the 90s, and even Shea. I'm sure Shea Stadium by 2000. Oh, they had their little food court, but it's not like it is now. Yeah. Like when you take your son to the Wells Fargo Center for the 76ers. Right. I mean, you could get a filet mignon. You can. You could get a vegetarian special. Yeah. What the fuck happened to a hot dog?
who gets a vegetarian special at a baseball game? Like, you just don't do. I'll never forget. Like, my dad and I were watching, like, it was a Giants 49ers game. And then my dad hated the 49ers. So I was like, Dad, why do you hate the 49ers so much? Oh, you know, they eat sushi at those games. Who eats sushi at a football game? Like, and it made sense. Oh, yeah, okay. I guess that's good enough reason to hate a football team because their fans eat sushi. And they called their fans white wine sippers because it was they actually would drink wine. Who drinks wine unless it's from a bottle in a paper bag? You don't drink wine at a ball game. You need a code of that. You need a code of ethics, and that's been completely thrown out the window.
Yeah, I mean, the experience, as much as I'm still a Yankee fan. I'm still a bit of a sports fan, but my desire to go to see these games live, it's probably mainly what the point you're hitting on. It's the environment.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Some people will say it's better now. It's cleaner, but there's more bathrooms.
You don't have to pee in the big trough anymore in Philly like you used to.
You know what? I'll sound like the old man. It isn't better. It sucks now. You go to a game, even if you're watching on TV, people are like this.
Yeah.
Or they're going like, eat worse. They're going like this.
Yeah. So, Dave, tell us about a time before that was happening. We talked a little bit about music. What about wrestling? I see this Jimmy Superfly Snuka. I see that was a beautiful foam finger. One of the originals.
Yes.
From
1984. I got that July 15th, 1984 at the Meadowlands. Wow. Jimmy Snuka, Roddy Piper.
Wow.
And that's when, fans actually, would cheer the good guy and boo the bad guy. I know that sounds crazy to you, Ian, but like, that's where the foam finger was from. And, going back to your original questions, I'm sorry I didn't even answer your question. Like, when it came to music and wrestling, those were the two venues. It was the Meadowlands and it was Madison Square Garden. And for music, every month. And for wrestling, every month. Like, the WWF would have a monthly show at the Garden, and the Meadowlands would have a monthly a monthly WWF show at the Meadowlands. And then later on, like about 85, they started doing Pro Wrestling USA, which was both the AWA and the NWA. So you could always expect a monthly show at both those venues growing up.
I know we've spoken about this before privately. When you would go to see wrestling or you would go to see a concert, and let's just say you saw Kiss at the Meadowlands and then you saw Kiss at the Garden, or WWE at the Meadowlands and WWF, whatever, then at the Garden. I always felt the Garden was the place. It might have been the exact same set list. It might have been the exact same order of matches. But something about Madison Square Garden made it special. Would you care to comment on this, please?
Yeah, and I'll go with music because, Cary, you're right. You're probably getting the same set list that you saw at the Meadowlands and then the next week at the Garden. But not only as a fan, but even as a performer, I'm sure there's a mystique to being at Madison Square Garden. So they knew, hey, I got to be at the top of my game. You could miss some chords, or you can forget some lyrics at the Meadowlands. They'll be forgiving, but they're not going to be so forgiving at Madison Square Garden. So they wanted to be at their best, and the fans expected a little bit more. And also the same thing goes with the tailgate before the show. At the Meadowlands, maybe go an hour or so before the show, have a couple of beers out in the parking lot before going into arena. At the Garden, it was a whole day thing. You go to the bars. There was all bars all around Madison Square Garden. You could take your pick. So if you say you were going to see Kiss, and I'll use that as an example because it's true, go to see Kiss, every bar around the Garden would be blasting Kiss. So everybody it would be like the concert before the concert. So everybody was hanging out, drinking, listening to the music. And then you go to the actual concert. There's just something about Madison Square Garden that was just a little bit more special than going to the Meadowlands. And the same with wrestling. And this is no disrespect because I love the guy. I think he's one of the best ring announcers of all time. But when you went to the Meadowlands, you got Gary Michael Capetta. When you went to the Garden, you got Howard Finkel. So, it was like, that's the guy I see on TV. Plus, you never saw championships change hands at the Meadowlands. You never saw anybody win a championship at the Meadowlands. That would always be at the Garden. And you know that. The only time I ever saw a championship change hands at the Meadowlands was when Stan Hansen beat Rick Martel for the AWA championship in 1985. Other than that, I never saw a championship change hands at the Meadowlands.
Well, that probably was because Pro Wrestling USA, that was their home base. So
yes,
that was their Madison Square Garden. But Dave's right, and I think Ian knows this. The title changes, just like Ring of Honor might do them at the Hammerstein.
Right.
It was the Garden. They would never throw the Meadowlands fans a bone. They'd throw them some good shows, and they'd throw them all the stars, but it wasn't. And the Garden, am I right? We're talking about the 80s, 90s Garden. It had an air of danger. It had it had an air of excitement, sort of like, not like you were describing Shea Stadium. It had its own aura about it. And maybe you can add to what I'm trying to say.
All right. So, like the Meadowlands, you drive into the parking lot at the Meadowlands. When the concert's over, you jump back in your car and you drive home. Like, that's the experience. At the Garden, it's a lot different because you go through the Lincoln Tunnel and you kind of like see the buffet, as you're going to the Garden. And then maybe afterwards, you get a little hungry after the show. So maybe you make a pit stop before going through the tunnel to get back to Jersey. Or, you go to the Village, get there early, go to the Village, go to the record shops. It's Only Rock and Roll, Bleecker Bob.
Right.
Like, you go to those places before going to the show and stuff like that. Man, dude, it's another, like you mentioned, Ian, about like it's another world in time periods. The difference between what was on one side of the GW and what was on the other side of the GW, or what was on the one side of Lincoln Tunnel and what was on the other side of Lincoln Tunnel, was a different world. And like going back to Cary, it had personality, it had character, it had a little bit of danger. You because you weren't parking your car in the garage, you were parking it on the street. You didn't know if your car was going to be there when you got back. That was kind of like a little bit of the event.
Street between 9th and 10th, your car.
Yes.
Yes, you didn't know if your car was going to be there, but it was special. So who are some of these early? We mentioned Kiss. I know you're a big Alice Cooper fan. We're both big Alice Cooper fans. Tell me about some of your favorite concert memories. And maybe, as I mentioned, any shows that you went to where you were disappointed.
Okay. Disappointed? Let's do the good ones first, then I'll get to the disappointed. But like Cooper, the first time I saw Alice Cooper wasn't at the Garden, it was at the Ritz in '89. So like, dude, just like, it sold out like that because it only fit like, how many, 1,500 people at the Ritz?
I don't remember. Ritz on 11th Street?
Yes, on 11th.
Okay.
Sold out like this, so you had to scalp tickets. So you kind of paid through the nose, and you didn't go, it's not like you went to Ticketmaster or there was no StubHub. If you wanted to buy tickets for Cooper at the Ritz, you kind of had to go to some shady places to try to score some tickets, But like Cooper at the Ritz, awesome. Roseland, another great venue to go see a show. Obviously the Garden, like I saw Kiss many times. Now, disappointing. You might be surprised by this, but like I saw Paul Simon at the Garden. Awful show. Leonard Skinner I saw at the Garden. Awful show. Like disappointing. Like they just like went through the motions. Some great shows like I saw Deep Purple at the Garden at the Perfect Strangers tour, which was amazing. Again, another concert I had to go wait online. Again, you got your tickets in Passaic. You went and got them in Passaic, New Jersey at the Capitol Theater. You waited online the night before. You slept overnight to make sure that you were near the first of the line, and you never got first. You still wound up getting shitty tickets. It didn't matter. Like and you never learned. You still thought you were going to get better tickets the next time out. You still got shitty tickets. But that's part of, again, Cary, right? That was part of the fun.
Right. You wanted, and the thing was, you wanted to have those. I'm talking before I was like hustling tickets. You wanted those tickets in your hand.
Yeah.
People talk about the tactile sensation of reading a book, which is still true. Yeah. I like the tactile sensation of holding a ticket, which
Major League Baseball has eliminated.
Well, everything.
But they've officially, they can't even print them out if you want them.
Yeah, when you would I told the story on the podcast, Dave, about I went to WrestleMania 1, and the way I got in, me and my friend Harry, we had like $40 between us. We bought a single ticket on the street for like $20 and people were looking everywhere, and we only had one ticket. So it was like, I said, Harry, we're both going to get in. He goes, how? I go, just flash your ticket. So if the show, it was a matinee. Mm-hmm. If the show started at 2, it was about 5 after 2. So you didn't have that big clog. Anyway, when the guy would tear the tickets, Dave, on either side, I looked for the oldest. I had the $20 bill. Like Harry Chapin, she stashed the bill in my shirt. I had the 20, and my friend Harry had the ticket. Not Harry Chapin, but the old man, like 6 turnstiles down, the oldest of the old men says, "Right this way, son." And he saw the 20, and he just takes the 20. He goes, "Now you're on your own."
There you go.
And so. There was another guy I knew, Dave, this guy, Tony Pizza. He was a scalper. His deal, I went to see, it was an oddball show for me. Bad Company and Climax Blues Band.
Wow.
And it was a Saturday in the summer. There was just a lot of people buying tickets. We didn't have a lot of money. Excuse me. And Tony Pizza said, I didn't know him. He says, I was with 3 guys. You guys looking to get in? We go, yeah. He goes, $10. I'll spin the gate. I go, what language is this guy talking? Well, what he did was he gathered 10 kids together, all getting $10. And he had a guy, just like the old man let me in WrestleMania. And it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. You can't do this now. You can't do anything now. And
at the Meadowlands back in the day, the Meadowlands had obviously they had the turnstiles when you first went in, but when you would go to the old Meadowlands, you go underground, and that's where they had the box office, and then it had an escalator that went up from the box office. So and I remember I did this for Queensryche, and I want to say that was 88, maybe around there. We went, it was sold out. So I remember it was $80. I gave $80 to the guy that was by the end, and he just let us in. The concert, here's the reason why. The concert was just about to start, so everybody was already in there. It was sold out, and I was down there, and there was no turnstile I had to go through. He just let me go through the escalator.
Wow.
That's it. Dude, I would record concerts I went to, and not like a phone that you could just slip in your pocket. I had a handheld recorder. Wow. So I would go and I would put on a raincoat and I would stick it. It was like, what's happening? You ever see what's happening with rerun? I would put it in the raincoat and I would try to look so I would wear a fedora and I'd wear the raincoat and I'd have an umbrella. And they would just sure, go right. They would never, and I would record the concerts. And then I would I would go to this place in Elmer Park, New Jersey, and I would sell it to them. And that's where you got your bootlegs from. Because there was, Cary, you remember there was cassette bootlegs of every concert back then.
And vinyl. And you mentioned before It's Only Rock and Roll on 8th Street and Bleecker Bottoms.
Yeah.
And there's a number of other ones. I remember the first time I saw, we're talking like in 75, 76, I saw Led Zeppelin and Jethro Tull bootleg albums.
Yeah.
I didn't know these existed.
Right.
And the quality sucked.
Right.
But it didn't matter.
You had to buy it.
You're whether your favorite band is Judas Priest or Bruce Springsteen or Deep Purple, you're getting that concert. Ooh, from the LA Forum, 1974. Fuck it. Right? But there was something exciting about that.
I was at the Maiden show when there was the whole big problem. Like there was like riots out in the parking lot, and people were smashing windows and everything like that. And for a while they were banned. So I was at that show. My car, the roof of my car caved in because people were on top of my car jumping up and down. Because people don't remember, Maiden for a while got banned from the Meadowlands, and Judas Priest to this day is still banned from Madison Square Garden.
Why?
Because I think it was the 86 tour for Turbo, all the fans ripped the seat cushions at the Garden and the cheap seats, and to this day, they still can't play Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
I might have been at a show. I'm going to take a wild guess. Did you go to the first? It might not have been their first tour, but I was there when Guns N' Roses, when Appetite
for Destruction. Yeah.
Right, when that was huge, and they'd already developed the reputation of coming on very late. And the Garden, we know from
the curfew,
right?
Yeah.
There's like golden time and diamond time.
Yeah.
And there was almost a riot. I don't know about a riot, but did you ever have a Guns N' Roses experience?
I have many.
Okay.
And here's the thing, like people are going to kill me on this. I have still to this day, I've never seen a good Guns N' Roses concert. Like every time I've seen them, something has happened. And the first time I saw them was at Giant Stadium. They opened up for Deep Purple and Aerosmith. I think it was summer of '87. It was like when Appetite first came out. If you watch the Paradise City video, half that video is from that Giant Stadium show. And if you look close enough, you could see a very young Dave LaGreca.
Wow.
16-year-old Dave LaGreca at that show. But so audio problems. Then I saw him a couple of years later, and 15 minutes in, somebody threw a lighter at Axl Rose. He stormed off the stage. And then like the time after that, I'm thinking it was with Metallica in 91, they got booed because what Cary was just talking about, Metallica came on first, and then there was like a 2-hour gap between Metallica and Guns N' Roses. By the time Guns N' Roses hit the stage, the whole stadium was chanting Guns N' Roses sucks because they're waiting for over 2 hours for Guns N' Roses. They didn't hit the stage until after 11 o'clock.
Ooh.
I remember reading Slash's book. He's not the nicest guy, but he talks about that tour, that particular tour, and it originally was Guns N' Roses opening up, but they were always so late, and Metallica didn't want to be involved in these penalty fees.
Yeah.
They accrued so many. Metallica said, "We'll go on first. You guys are the stars." And that's how the rest of that tour went on.
And I think the great Enough Xenough was the opener on some of the shows. So I saw them in 2010, and they did that. And I was following along with the Eagles. The Eagles had a playoff game that night, and no shit, not kidding, no kayfabe, they came on the minute the football game was over. They came up, they waited. Sebastian Bach played the minute the football game was over. It was like an hour and a half later after Sebastian Bach was done. They came on stage. So
I believe it. But I like for other show, I seeing Aerosmith live at the Garden. I mean, some great shows when Steven Tyler would just be nuts. Like he would do somersaults and cartwheels. Like he was like crazy. And he would be hanging off the rafters on the stage. It was phenomenal, man. Some awesome shows with that band.
Well, I'm going to ask you, this is tough to get this out, but I'm going to, in a succinct way, as you can see, I'm stumbling already. You know, in Last Stop Penn Station, I talk about the characters that were around. Not, yes, on the street, but not just that. You know, crazy Uncle Louie, or old lady Doris down the street, or Pete the mailman, or the fat guy that ran the candy store, you know, Jumbo. Now, Dave, what happened to these people? What happened to characters in society?
I don't know. I remember one time we were talking, I told you a story about, you know, just the history that's in the city and landmarks that you have to see when you go in New York. And one of those landmarks when I first came into the city with my friends was Cafe Wha, because you heard about like all these stories of Cafe Wha. And, you know, you go to Cafe Wha, well, you got to get hammered at Cafe Wha. You don't just go there. Like you need to make a memory at Cafe Wha. And I'll never forget just completely getting obliterated at Cafe Wha. And then having to use the payphone outside Cafe Wha, and I lit a cigar and I was smoking a cigar, and I took the cigar to make the phone call. I put the cigar in my pocket, and I was wearing a leather jacket. I put it in the pocket of my leather jacket. So I'm on the phone, and my buddy's like, "Dave, you're smoking." And I said, "I know, I was smoking a cigar." "No, you're literally smoking." Smoke was coming out of my jacket. And then I'm like, and I felt it like I was burning. It went through my jacket, went through my clothes. And then I take off my jacket. Then I take off my shirt. Then I take off my pants. And then before you know, I'm in my underwear right outside Cafe Wha. Like that would never happen today. Back then, all right, it's a Friday night in the city.
Right.
Nobody would even look at you twice.
No, they wouldn't even walk away. They wouldn't even cross the street. They'd be like, all right, whatever. Then I get my buddy gets me to get dressed again. I get my clothes on, and right near Cafe Wha was a pizzeria. And I go in the pizzeria, and I don't even remember what time it is at this point. And that's the other thing too about New York. The city never sleep. Like everything was open late. Nothing closed early. Everything was open. So I'm eating in the pizzeria. I'm eating my pizza, and I tell the guy behind the counter, I said, "Man, this is the most awesome pizzeria I've ever been in." He goes, "Thank you." I said, "I've never been in a pizzeria that spins. Like I can't believe this is so cool. How this pizzeria spins." Next thing you know, I'm yakking all over the place. But like Cary, that would never happen today. Like I would never make it past taking off my shirt. Somebody would have stopped you. But in New York, it was okay. It was okay, man. There's nothing wrong with that. Express yourself. Because there would be characters that would see that every day, and there'd be people that would just like, hey, you know what? I got a lot in New York. Leave him alone. He's just a kid. I got that a lot in New York. Like, leave him alone. He's just a kid. Leave him alone.
Yeah, the whole era's changed. I mean, I talk about this at Ring of Honor. You go in the back, and everyone's staring at their phone. We were brought up. I could call you a wrestling historian, and Ian, and we all try. We know all these road stories from these legends that we loved, and these guys were just in the car and bullshitting and talking and telling stories. The current group of not just wrestlers, but young people, how are they going to develop any kind of character to be, and it's also people our age too have declined.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, like all those stories, like you're talking about concerts, man, if we had time, go through every concert I went to when I was like 16, 17, 18, You know, I can remember the dates. I can remember set lists, you know, like, and my buddies can too, because that's how you lived it. And just that circle of the people that went and experienced it with you, or just sharing stories with you. But now it's like, you're so quick. You want to put it on social media. You want to take the pictures and show the world, or you want to videotape it. You have your phone up videotaping it. You're not experiencing the moment. And also, everybody's in such a rush. You know, everybody wants to know what the set list is before the concert actually happens. I don't want to know the set list before the concert. Everybody's like, what time does the band go on? I don't care, man. Like, get there early, hang out, let's have fun. Let's make it an evening. Let's make a memory. You know, I think that's part of the problem, is people don't experience the moment. They're so worried about sharing it with everybody that they don't live in the moment. Cary, you and I talked about this. The greatest live set list or live concert, live moment, everybody always brings up is Queen at Live Aid, right? Everybody talks about Freddie Mercury at Wembley Stadium, you know, 100,000 fans clapping along to Radio Gaga. Like, everybody talk that, and I'm not trying to sound like an old man here. That would never happen today. Never. Because everybody would have their phone up. Nobody would put their phone in their freaking pocket and clap along and sing along. It just doesn't happen. Just to think about, one of the greatest moments in music history wouldn't happen today because people don't know how to live in the moment.
Did you have anybody that showed you the ropes? Because I had my brother. My brother's 8 years older. He took me to Philly. I saw the Strokes on their first U.S. tour. I saw the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the Hives, Jet, all the rock and roll groups. When the Kooks came in from England, I saw them, and all the, you know, from 2000 to 2005, my brother was sneaking me into different venues. Did you have anybody like that in your life that helped show you the ropes a little bit? Was your dad a big rock and roll guy?
Yeah, well, first of all, Ian, I'm at the point where my dad didn't experience rock and roll, you know, like, my dad's not, you know, like, so, like, that was kind of the cool thing, because music was like a rebellion against your parents. That was part of the mystique of it, you know. Your parents didn't like it, you know. My dad would come in, and God rest his soul, I love him to death. But, like, you know, if I was playing something, he'd come in and turn it off.
Okay.
Like, that was kind of like where you knew it was something that was good, because your dad didn't like it.
Yeah, my
The other
father
thing
used to get pissed off at Hendrix.
I had the opposite experience. I was named after Ian Gillian, after Ian Hunter, after Ian Anderson. And my dad,
pretty cool.
Yeah, my dad would come in and he would, why aren't you listening to that louder? Oh, what do you got? Oh, have you heard of Mott the Hoople? Have you heard of Foghat? He'd make fun of me when hey, Dad, you ever hear of Humble Pie? Yeah, I'll go down to the record store, buy the new Foghat album, and then we'll talk. You know,
see, that's cool. That's awesome, and you're making memories with your father. That's fantastic, because that's what I do with my daughter now. But for my generation, it was forbidden music. But to answer your question, yeah, my brother. I have an older brother, so he got into music before me. So all my like first experiences at clubs and stuff was my brother, you know, helping me get in. Lamore's, you know, in Brooklyn, like I said, the Ritz in Manhattan, like Streets in New Rochelle, you know, Mothers in Wayne, Wild Mike's in Lodi, dude, like,
yeah.
Let's not forget all the Jersey.
Studio One in Newark, like, dude, that's, man, like, yeah, dude, like, that's like, yeah, my brother exposed me to the music, got me into the music, got me to my first concerts and all that. Yeah, so I had my brother who was 3 years older than me.
And Dave was able, whether he was properly of age or not, was in an era when you wouldn't believe it, Ian, how many clubs there were.
Yeah.
Mostly copy music, which was fine with us. Mm-hmm. New York City there were some original bands around, but they were mainly in the city. But there were dozens of these rock and roll clubs all through Jersey, all through Long Island, into New York State, the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
And there was like 100 good bands.
like Asbury Park, man. Like
I used to sneak in Stone Pony.
yeah, not just the Stone Pony, Fast Lane in Asbury. Like, dude,
Julio's South.
Dude,
DJs.
Oh my God! Like, just it's like, and again, Asbury Park. You're parking over there at Asbury Park. You don't know if your car is going to be there when you got out. Back in the day.
Nice.
But I was able to see a lot of bands before they broke it big. Like going to streets and going to wild mics and stuff like that. But then I was able to see a lot of bands kind of like when they're on their way, like a lot of bands from the 70s that were kind of on their way down. I got to see those bands too. Like, especially at Mothers and Wayne. Like I saw Meatloaf, I saw Dee Snider. I see a lot of bands like kind of that were on their way down.
Dave, there was another club called Fountain Casino. Fountain Casino was halfway down the shore. It was on Route 35.
Huh.
And I remember I got to, thanks that I had some friends in my pocket, I got to meet Steve Marriott from Humble Pie.
No way.
And
nice.
It was the same period of time that Aerosmith was on the down.
Right.
Mike G was their publicist.
Really?
Yeah, when they were, it was like nothing to publicize.
The early 80s.
But he had some time with them. But the point is, it's hard to imagine that we're telling the truth with how many clubs there were.
Right.
It was the 18-year-old drinking age. And there was virtually nobody was worried about drunken driving. I'm not promoting drunken driving, but nobody was worried about it.
No, and it was also too, and the Birchill was another great club too. The Birchill was amazing, especially for like the hard rock metal scene in the 80s. But it was kind of like back then too, like if you were close to home and you got an officer saw you, he'd be like, you know what, he's close to home. Like he'll be home. Like I'm not promoting it either, but it was just a different time, like a different era. And you just didn't think, your mind didn't go that way. And the other thing too is like, you did things that you knew was going to die that night. And what I mean by that is like, if you got into a real embarrassing situation, whatever that might be, you knew it was going to die that night. Like you take it to you, you go to your friends and be like, we're taking this. This is it. We're locking it down. It doesn't leave this room. You can't do that now because there's going to be somebody taking a picture, somebody videotaping it. I don't know how like celebrities and athletes or anything, like somebody's taping you, somebody's taking a picture of you.
Dave,
but like then it died that night.
Think of Derek Jeter. How did he have a career? Handsome, eligible, wealthy, talented bachelor in New York City and never get in any trouble. What did he go from Yankee Stadium to his house?
The gift baskets. Yes. There's an implication when you give the gift baskets for something.
But yes, and back in the olden days, there's stories of going back to Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and this one, but no one talked about it. Mm-hmm. Nowadays you can't do anything.
Yeah, and I think too. I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the 18, like the age limit for drinking at 18, because especially with rock music, you want to grab the younger audience. And I don't know if it grabs the younger audience now. I think it's an older audience. Like when I would go see Kiss, security would have to come down and be like, all right, you got to leave. Now people leave before the encore because they want to beat traffic. You didn't worry about that shit. Like if you're stuck in traffic for 2 hours, whatever, or you just went to the bar until it closed. So when you were driving, there was no traffic. Like it's just a different mindset. I'm not saying it's bad, worse, whatever. It's just a completely different mindset now when it comes to music and when it comes to wrestling. Like it's just a different vibe than it was before.
Was there any groups that you thought were going to hit it big, that you were sure were going to be the next big thing that just didn't quite make it?
Yeah, there was a band called Icon that I thought was going to be huge, and they just never really hit. There was a lot of like metal bands that I really Hades was one that I thought was going to be huge. I thought they were going to be like the next Metallica, and it just never happened for them. What was another? Dirty Looks was another band I thought was going to be huge, and it just Trickster was another band like I thought was going to be like the next Bon Jovi, and they never got it out of second gear. But yeah, there was a lot because that was the other thing too. And like when you saw a headlining band, there was an opening band. Mm-hmm. And that it was kind of like the Intercontinental Championship. Right. Like when you held the Intercontinental Championship, that meant that you were going to be the next world champion. That was kind of like your testing ground to see if you were going to make it to the next level. It was the same thing opening for a big headlining band, like, are you going to be that next band? Like, I remember Skid Row opening up for Aerosmith and knowing like this band is going to be the next big band. And like 6 months later, they had the #1 album and they had a bunch of top 10 hits, but they were the opening band. Like Guns N' Roses, they opened up for Cooper in '87, and you knew they were going to be the next big band. That was the way it was, like Judas Priest. Like when I saw Priest, like I remember Testament was opening for them, and they're like, all right, they're going to be the next big metal band. And that, right, Cary, like you knew, like you went and saw the opening band, and they had to prove to you that they had the metal to kind of be like to take it to the next level.
I was backstage at Judas Priest's first New York theater show.
We made it.
It was them. It was it was at the Academy of Music on 14th Street, and it was like one of these mishmash bills. It was like Judas Priest, Molly Hatchet, and UFO.
Okay.
It might have been Thin Lizzy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I saw Priest, and it's like I was doing my coke thing with one of the road people, and I go, "Who's this opening band?" He goes, "I don't know. They're from England." Yeah. And it was Priest.
Very cool.
Are they from England?
Yeah, they're from the UK. Yeah.
Yes, I remember watching this guy with blonde hair, and they, back then, and Dave's been at shows like this, and you probably have too. There's been when there would be like a 3-4 show, at these theaters. The opening band played 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's it.
I saw the Kings of Leon do 20 minutes in front of the Strokes, and Regina Spektor do 20 minutes in front of the Strokes. They're just because that's all they could.
That's all your set list was.
Yeah.
And you're happy to get it. Listen, man, I want to thank you so much for doing this with us.
That's it.
Well,
we got a little more, I think, right?
I got some more, but I didn't. We're going to go back to Times Square. I got to ask you a question. You don't have to answer it.
You don't have to. Uh-oh. This is the ones he hits me with, and you don't, Dave.
Yeah. Walking around Times Square, obviously, they had all the peep shows. The theaters were wide open. There was the world famous, and it was even open up to 3 years ago, Show World.
That was like the big thing. It had the biggest lights. It had the biggest, it said on top of it said world famous.
Right.
That was like, that's the one you had to go to. It was the brightest out of all.
Did you ever happen to be pushed into it?
I don't think I had to be pushed. I don't think I had to be pushed.
Okay.
But yes, those were like that again, that was part of the experience of going into the city. It wasn't, and it's so different now. Like it's like Disneyland now, right? I mean, not now. I mean, obviously there's troubles there since the pandemic, but like it was seedy, it was dirty, but that's what you were drawn to. It was the grittiness, like when I go see a band, I don't want to go to a band and hear what I hear on the album. I want it to be a little gritty. I want it to be unpolished. I want it to be dirty. I want a little dirt on it. You know what I mean? And that's what the city was. It was dirty. It was like that's what made it special and gave it personality and gave it character. It wasn't so like, dude, it's not corporate. None of the boroughs were in New York. Like everything was unique, and it was like specialized stores that were like independent only to New York. You know, there was no like a coffee shop was a coffee shop. It wasn't Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. You know, a clothing shop wasn't like Forever 21. It was like unique that you went to the city specifically because you knew that was the only place where you could get that type of jean or that type of shirt or that type of jacket. Same with records. It wasn't Sam Goody or Tower Records. That came later. It was Bleecker Bob's. It's only rock and roll. Like, dude, it was, man.
Sounds a lot like, how would you compare it? Have you ever been to South Street in Philadelphia? South Street in Philly. See, it feels like a lot what you're describing. That feels like
no, and it's the same thing with Asbury. Like Asbury Park now has like kind of like a lot of vinyl shops and kind of like shops that sell like rock and roll memorabilia. Like to me, Asbury Park, like that little downtown area that they have right off the beach, is more kind of like what the Village used to be, or what like it's a little bit more of that vibe where you're going to get something special when you go into one of those shops.
Yeah. Yeah, Cary, before we let Dave go, I got to address the elephant in the room, the big head that pops up. I think it was SummerSlam a couple years ago. A couple fans tagged me. They thought it was me. We have a striking resemblance to one another.
Where?
There's
yeah, dude, do not take that as not a compliment, Ian. You're young and handsome. I am old and ragged. Like, I saw that, and it's like, people were like, "Is that Ian?" And like, even you were like, "I don't know."
Yeah,
it was gray hair. You have no gray hair, dude. You're handsome. Like me, it's dude, not a compliment at all. But compliment to me, maybe not a compliment to you.
Well, we're in the same video game. I know your head pops up in Retromania. It's one of the little Easter eggs, and I'm on commentary for that, so that's fun. We get to hang out there. But it's interesting. We haven't really crossed paths as much. I was on Busted Open a couple of years ago, and I'd love to come back and spread the good word of Ring of Honor once again.
Well, maybe Ring of Honor could help out in getting you on the show. I don't know. We'll see what they, we'll see. But no, but seriously, I'm a big fan of yours. You know that. I think you do amazing work. I love Ring of Honor wrestling. I was so happy and proud when you guys did the Garden, sold out the Garden, like, in record time, like to go into enemy territory and do better than they were able to do. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a long time before the WWE was able to sell out the Garden, and you guys were able to. So kudos to you.
I gotta ask him this question. I'm sorry. Do you think that the AEW is going to sell out Forest Hills,
Arthur Ashe?
Arthur Ashe? And what is the attendance?
Oh, that's a big one. If anybody
23,000. 23,000.
I think they could.
I think they could too. I think it's going to be a challenge. I think if anybody could right now, it's them. So
aren't they at the Prudential Center like a week before that?
I don't know. They were supposed to be at the Prudential Center just before the pandemic hit. They were supposed to be there in it was like 2 weeks after the pandemic hit. And they were going to have their biggest gate ever. Like they were close to a sell. They were in essence going to sell it out. It's hard. It's hard right now because, like AEW wrestling is weird right now. There's so much infighting when it comes to wrestling. Like,
what do you mean?
WWE fans hate AEW and AEW hates WWE fans. It's like, it is ridiculous because pro wrestling, it was always against the establishment. So it was us against them. Now it's us against us. Like, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But that seems to be kind of like the vibe right now in pro wrestling, which, like, listen, like, I love Alice Cooper. I love that doesn't mean I hate Deep Purple or I hate Kiss. Like, I love everything. Like, with wrestling fans, like, I don't know, there's a lot of infighting right now. I'm really hoping that vibe changes soon.
I hope so too, and we've got some good advances coming up for Baltimore. Where we're coming back live. We're coming back to Philadelphia for 2 nights, and we're headed to Florida after that. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that does that goes away too. The pandemic, I don't know if you feel this way, Dave, but the pandemic, I started to realize life is way too short. You know, anything that I had against just about anybody went out the window because we were spared. You know, when my family survived through the pandemic, Cary's family did, you know, friends survived. And at this point, I just want to go back and call wrestling again, surrounded by people, and hear that roar, or feel that excitement, that anticipation, that the moment before the first music hits, when you can feel everybody's ready to just get out on their feet and yell and cheer for the first person that they know.
Yeah, Cary and I talked a lot during like the last 16 months. Like we just kind of like, and I've said that to you before, he was kind of like a good wall for me to lean on, so during some really tough times. And I know a lot of those conversations were kind of like, will it ever be the same? Will we ever see a stadium or an arena full of people? Because I got to be honest, I had my doubts. Like I was thinking, have I seen my last concert? You know, will we ever get like a WrestleMania where there's 70,000, or even an arena like the Garden, you know, full of 15,000 fans? And here we are. Foo Fighters just played, you know, sold out Madison Square Garden. You know, I went to AEW Double or Nothing where, you know, they sold out 5,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 5,000's a lot. You know, 4 months ago, that was a lot, you know? So I'm very, very thankful that we're getting a second chance, you know? And for me, I'm kind of nervous. What's the next thing? You know, is there going to be another, just another? So now I'm going to go out there and I'm going to live it, man. I'm going to see as many concerts I can. I'm going to see as many wrestling events I can, because I know what it's like to be without, and I hate it. So I want to, like you, man, this is a second chance. And I just don't want people to fall back to those bad habits. You know what? Go to the concert, first song in, take a picture, and then put the phone in your pocket and enjoy the rest of the show. You know, don't tweet. Tweet before it and tweet after it, but don't tweet during it. Go and enjoy the moment, whether it's wrestling, concerts, sporting events, or whatever. Go and enjoy it, because it could be taken away like that. Like, just like, you know, who would have thought 2 years ago that we'd be talking about no live events, no concerts, but we did. So now we got a second chance. Let's live it up and let's have fun, man. Let's have some fun, man.
LaGreca should be a public service announcement for everybody to hear, because he's right.
Do you got any tickets? I got tickets to White Reaper. White Reaper's one of the good new rock bands, and I'm September, Asbury Park. I'm going to see them. Do you have anything coming up?
Cary and I, man, we're going to see Cooper in September in Atlantic City.
Nice.
I can't wait, man. Cooper's my all-time favorite. I have never missed a tour.
Wow.
Since '89, I've seen him over
tour. He's not one of these bands like, you know, where there's a 5-year gap. He plays.
Yeah. Have you been to Phoenix? It's pretty cool.
I've seen him over 30 times. So I don't miss a tour. So I'm not planning on missing this tour. And as far as wrestling, I'm booked, man. I don't see any Ring of Honor, but you know, a lot of people are like reaching out to me to do stuff, and I'm going out there. I'm like AEW, MLW, Mission Pro Wrestling, WWE. I'm going out there, man. I'm going to see as many shows as I possibly can.
Open invitation from Ring of Honor from Cary.
Yeah, that's what you say. Like, hey, yeah, you know, like, come over. You know, when you're in the neighborhood, come over. No, make some plans, dude. Call me up, man. Let's go. I'll come out. I'll come, man, and hang out.
Oh, sounds good. We'll get you the dates on August. August in Philadelphia, if that works.
Maybe we could get him to come to Philly.
Maybe we can come to Philly. Maybe
I'll come to Philly, dude. I'll come to Philly.
All right, ECW Arena, gotta love it, right?
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this with us, and thank you for schooling us and co-signing some of the stuff. Because sometimes when I tell these stories, Dave, it's like I'm thinking no one's going to believe any of this.
I don't know if I believe it myself. Like I go back and think of some of those moments, and like now having kids, I'm like, there's a part of me that says, man, I wish they could experience some of it. But then I'm like, thank God.
They'll be at the mall.
I don't even know. I don't even think they go to the mall anymore. The mall's like passe now. Right, Ian? Like the mall's like dead. Malls are dead.
Malls are, yeah. And you know what? Now it's they sit in circles and they are on TikTok. They just look at TikTok and they look at Instagram and they say, "Oh, hey, Cary, this is funny."
Don't they want to mess around a little?
Yeah, a little hanky panky, maybe a little bit.
How do you have hanky panky if you're TikToking?
I don't know. Maybe there's something else.
Right? How do these kids get laid?
Hey, Cary,
I don't know, man. Like they don't. No, seriously. Like I talked to like a lot of younger people that work at Sirius XM. Like they don't even like date anymore. Like there's no like date. I don't know what the fuck they do. I don't know what they do, man. Like seriously, I'm sorry to mean to curse, but I don't know what they do.
If I can do it, if I found a wife in New York City. If I can do it, anybody can. I'll say.
I'm not. But bam, we're not talking about finding a wife. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about somebody to play with it a little bit. That's all.
You're a good man.
Well, Dave, we thank you so much for coming on Last Stop Penn Station. We really enjoyed having you. Where can the people hear you? You're on 6 days a week now. You're on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and usually.
Well, now Busted Open is actually on 7 days a week. If you have the podcast, we have. I'm live Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern time on Sirius XM Fight Nation channel 156. We have what we call the Masters class that's only available on the Busted Open podcast. It's myself, Mark Henry, Tommy Dreamer, and Bully Ray. Cool. So please support, subscribe, rate, comment, whatever to our podcast that's available on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Pandora. And then, I'm trying to do something with my brother on YouTube. We had one of the last interviews with Tony Katane before she tragically passed. I got to sit down and talk with her just about a month before she passed. Like, you're talking about rock and roll, man. She was like the hard rock. Like, she was it, man. She was like the original video vixen back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And she became a good friend. I miss her so much. But you can see me on YouTube as well. And man, I really appreciate you guys, man. You guys are awesome. I love talking to you. Thank you for all your support.
Likewise.
We love you too, and thanks for doing this, my man.
You got it.
Soon. Thanks.
Sounds good.